Oh, what a day it is. Right here in Ocala, Florida, I'm Jonathan Morris Schwartz. This is my Manic Brain. Got the R-rated version of what I write in my book entitled My Manic Brain, Sex, Politics, and Everlasting Life, available for 99 cents. That's the ebook version, $7.99 for the soft cover, bring it home and enjoy it version on Amazon.com and wherever books that don't sell are sold. Today is Monday, March 15th, 2021. I've got a few things circulating around this manic brain of mine that I'm writing about. Yesterday, on my Substack newsletter, and for those of you who don't read it, it is currently free every day at jonathanschwartz.substack.com. You are missing out on my wonderful manic newsletter. Yesterday's topic had to do with boredom and idle hands, and explored conversations, informal conversations that I had with people in and around Ocala, Florida. I travel a lot, and it discussed their lives. Some were poor, some were rich, some had it all, some had nothing. Some had a wonderful home and family, others did not. One was homeless his entire life. It's a wonderful read if you feel like looking into somebody's mind about what they perceive as boredom, what their thoughts are about their current situation, and whether they're optimistic about their future. The other thing that's revolving around my mind for today's newsletter, which will come out today on Monday, March 15th, later in the afternoon, has to do with picking our poison. In other words, I invested 6 months ago, I started a basket of stocks, small, of what I'm calling the Jonathan Morris Schwartz My Manic Brain Sin Mutual Fund, which consisted of stocks that do well when people sin more. Tobacco stocks, gun stocks, drug stocks, pot stocks, liquor stocks, and a basket of new stocks that are emerging now that have to do with low-dose psychedelics. That there are companies now and laboratories that are experimenting with various types of psychedelics. Some are derived from the magic mushrooms, some are, which are the mushrooms that grow in cow shit. Some are from what we, derived from LSD. There's all types of psychedelic type natural and synthetic substances that are mostly known for the quote-unquote hippies or the deadheads who would trip on acid, dude, and see all the, the world would change, the colors would meld and move in different directions. They would feel a sense of euphoria, otherworldliness, and some of the psychedelics, people who take them claim that that's how they learned about their own consciousness, and in some cases, people claim that using psychedelics, hallucinogens, helped them with PTSD and removed or eliminated or reduced their fear of dying because they were so certain that there was a consciousness and energy that lived on beyond them. In other words, they believed in everlasting life as a result of experimenting with some of these drugs. And so therefore, today's article will explore my prediction, which is when I say we're picking our poisons now, and it ties in with yesterday's boredom, when we're bored, this came from apparently the Bible from 1971, idle hands are the devil's playthings, the devil's workshop, meaning when we're bored, and in modern society, particularly with the potential of universal income and the fact that many people may not be rich, but they're not poor. They're stuck in this sort of land where they have a house or they're staying at someone else's house. There's enough food. They have electricity. They have Wi-Fi. They don't have a lot of money, but they have enough to buy a cup of coffee or to have some recreational leisure, and they don't know what to do with themselves in some cases. Right now, a lot of people, particularly with the pandemic and the isolation, are turning toward food, drugs, sex, and recreational drinking, pills. Some are not necessarily becoming addicted to a substance, but are becoming addicted to the sedentary leisure lifestyle. When you spend a year watching Netflix and Disney Plus and Hulu and YouTube and flipping around on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, and your life investing in stocks that because Reddit told you to, or because you have a few extra dollars and everything seems to be going up. These new NFTs now, which I'm just reading about now, but you can invest in digital electronic art and other collectibles where you're not, from what I understand, even buying the actual piece of art. You're buying the authentication of it, and that in and of itself has a value. We're in strange times. That being said, and people are making millions of dollars off these strange times. So yesterday's focus, please read it on Substack about boredom. Today's article will tie in, well, what do we do with our boredom, and how we're on the verge of having what I'll call designer safer drugs. In the 80s when Prozac came out, it was the beginning of people who had depression, chemical depression, clinical depression, finally having a pill that, and there's a myriad of other antidepressants out there now. You could argue what the long-term effects are of taking those pills, but there is no doubt that they work. At least, everyone, that I've ever known, and some of what the research that I've read, clearly it makes a big difference in people's lives. Well, we will get to a point where, whether it's psychedelics, whether it's some form of cannabis, whether it's some natural or combination of natural and synthetic molecule that we will ingest, that will do several things, that will reduce anxiety, that will help us live in the moment, that will chill us out, that will bring joy to our lives. But in the meanwhile, in today's article on Substack, we'll get into what's the current drug. And for most people, it's either food, sex, drugs, or vegging out on doing nothing, on living in the moment, perhaps without any motivation for change. And we'll explore that. The other thing that I think about, and that I'm going to write about over the next week, I'm of the belief now that, and it's a perverse belief, that the government, the Federal Reserve, Chairman Powell, Biden, the left-leaning Congress, are now in the perfect storm. We are now in the perfect storm, in that in 2008, I remember I was driving and being so enraged that we were bailing out Wall Street and the big banks. And here, yeah, I know people bought homes and were flipping them and they signed the mortgage, etc. But when it all came crashing down, when someone who bought a house for $100,000 and sold it for $200,000, and that person bought it and sold it for $300,000, and then someone got stuck with a $400,000 house that was worth $100,000 and lost it, that was terrible for millions of people. There are still, in fact, I just was recommended to see a documentary film, or a documentary narrative film called Nomad, about how many people are still homeless, professionals who got screwed by the housing bubble. Okay, if you're going to say, well, everyone takes responsibility, not one Wall Street banker, not one mortgage broker, not one high-flying billionaire who enabled this nonsense, enabled this housing bubble that burst, paid a price for it. And I remember in 2008 and 9 having my blood boil over. We're bailing these people out, and we're letting people get foreclosed on. The working class are getting screwed up the you-know-what. And we did it. But the politics was different then. We've now hit a point where, put simply, the politics and the government and society has basically said, look, you're going to bail out the billionaires with endless 0% interest rate, if the Fed's going to print like it's 1999, if monopoly funny money, if QE, which is quantitative easing, which is bailing out rich people who don't need it, giving money to zombie companies, if all that's going to continue, if we're going to continue to make the 1% richer, the billionaires are going to make billions more, the millionaires are going to make millions more, if that's the name of the game, then let's all get in on this game. You know, the gig's over. The party is now going to be all entrance to all, meaning we are now going to print endless trillions of dollars for all of us. Does anyone really believe that after giving the unemployment, state unemployment plus additional federal employment, that if 10 or 15 or 20 million of these unemployed folks, many because of technology, the cashiers, the toll booth collectors, the middle management that technology's taken over, the secretaries, the receptionists, all these jobs that are not needed anymore. If we're going, you think we're going to get to a point where we're going to say, I'm sorry, you were a cashier, you worked hard, you were a middle manager, you were in retail, you were a secretary, you were a receptionist, you were a bartender, you were a waitress, you worked in some retail environment or service environment that now is completely done through delivery or technology. Are we really going to tell 10, 15, 20 million people that they're ever going to be off of unemployment? That we're just going to let them starve? No. Unemployment now is effectively universal income. There will never come a time, I predict today, March 15th, Monday, 2021, that there will be at least 10, 15, 20 million people, and I'm not saying I'm against it, I'm for it, frankly, that if they never work again, they will be given some form of universal income, call it unemployment, call it whatever you wish, indefinitely, unless they find another job, and some will, but most won't, particularly those that either can't go back to school or are unable to adapt to the new technological environment and workplace. Now, so that's 10, 15, 20 million. Let's take the 60, 80, 100, 120 million, depending on where the line is drawn, that are working, the people making 40,000, 60,000, 80,000, maybe 100,000, whatever the cutoff arbitrarily becomes. Does anyone really believe that we're going to get to a point where when the middle class gets a taste of $1,200 being dumped in their checking account, $600, $1,400, and this latest one, many families with adult dependents, you got 2, 3, 4 people in your house, and you're the head of household, or you're even married, single, even filing, you could get $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, and then they've increased the ability to deduct. There's going to be, and again, I'm not against it, but there's no going back. In other words, the deal now, the unspoken arrangement and deal between the poor and the middle class and the super duper rich is, we're in on the game now. You want to enrich yourself with politics and lobbying and this bullshit, this utter bullshit that interest rates have to stay zero forever and quantitative easing, and we can't let these banks fail because they're too big to fail, and companies have to stay zombie companies because if they fail, unemployment will get worse, and we have to keep unemployment and inflation in check. The bottom line is, inflation could go to 100%. There is no way that society, politics, the Fed, and the people in general are going to allow any of this funny money to expire, period. I guarantee you, take it to that too big to fail bank down the street. We're now going to print money indefinitely. The debt will go from, I think it's close to 30 trillion to 40 trillion to 50 trillion to 100 trillion. There is no stopping. Now, one might say, what about inflation? What's going to happen? I predict what will happen is there will come a point, perhaps in our lifetime or not, perhaps in a year, or perhaps in 100 years, where just like Rome. We're going to provide bread and circus for the masses until there is no more bread and circus. It's really going to be up to China and Russia to a large degree in terms of when they cut us off, or when the dollar is no longer the standard, or when our power, right now we've got military powers. We're the biggest nuclear power. We're the strongest country in the world. We're tough motherfuckers, period. And so that's part of it. People, what are they going to do? We're going to print as much as we want. Come and get us. Tough luck. We are the United States of America, and I'm proud, and I believe we should do this. Don't get me wrong. I'm all for fairness. You can enrich the rich. You got to enrich everybody. Let us all into the party. But the end game will be inflation, and the end game at some point will probably be a devaluation of the dollar. It's possible that all this sort of cryptocurrency will find its way in, and I'm going to analyze that over the next couple of weeks. That maybe the dollar, maybe it will be some form of decentralized money and banking. Maybe a whole new barter system will come into play. There will come a point where, if everyone becomes a millionaire, something has to give, and it's likely going to be the cost of a gallon of milk, which will be $100. So that's what I'm thinking about. That's what's going on in this manic brain. I'll be writing about it. Please enjoy the podcast. The best way to follow me is through Substack, frankly. I do have a YouTube channel. Love to have you see my froggy face if you'd like. You can listen to me on the podcast, which is on iTunes, Google, Spotify, wherever great podcasts are broadcast. I am Jonathan Morris Schwartz. Please listen to my manic brain, and oh, what a day it is. Goodbye, everybody.